The Niners signed Clelin Ferrell. He was a bust. I mean, he was the 4th pick overall out of Clemson, 10 sacks in 4 seasons with the Raiders. And they give him 1 year, $2.5 million, $1.8 million guaranteed. I saw a video today. He said, he's excited to be a Niner. Is this an upgrade or a downgrade going from, like, let's say, an Amenahue or an Ebukam to Clelin Ferrell in your mind?
Yeah, it's a downgrade 100%. The price tag clearly indicates that, right? Charles Amenahue got, 2 years, $28 million. Samson Ebukam, I think, got 3 years, $30 million, I want to say. He was somewhere around the $11 million.
I think. It might have been
27. Yeah. So clearly two, players that were higher valued than Clelin Ferrell during free agency. Funnily enough, my dad pointed this out to me because I was joking with him earlier in the season that I thought Clelin Ferrell could be their reclamation project because he was starting to play some 3 technique for the Raiders at the time. And I was joking, this will be the next Arden Key, who was the next Charles Amenahue, and they actually signed him. Now, I hadn't watched Clelin Ferrell at all, so I watched him the last couple days. And athletically, Larry, I think he leaves a little bit to be desired. As opposed to a Charles Amenahue or an Arden Key. He's not as explosive as either of those guys, and he doesn't bend like either of those guys. He's a very stiff athlete. In fact, when I watched him, Larry, I was shocked that this guy was a top 5 pick because there's no elite traits about him athletically. And
he had elite production. He was drafted off production.
Next to elite production, next to Christian Wilkins, who's a top 5 defensive tackle in the sport, and Dexter Lawrence, who's the best nose tackle in the sport. So, I mean, that could have aided it, but you're absolutely right. It was the elite production. And then I was going back and reading some of his scouting reports just to try and understand why he's, drafted where he was. And it seemed like his character evaluation was off the charts. Like, he was the alpha. He was the big dog in the room, in a defensive line room with Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins, who were stars. And so I guess a lot of those things played into it. But he is a downgrade. I do think he has a role, though, Larry, because I think he's going to be on a more talented defensive line than either Samson Ebukam or Charles Amenahue were on the last 2 years. I think Javon Hargrave is such an upgrade over even a DJ Jones. When you slot him next to Armstead and Bosa, I think you can get away even if that edge player is a little bit less than. And then, look, if he can become solid at stopping the run on 1st and 2nd down as an edge player, Larry, which I think he can be in this scheme, I think he can, be a very, very strong guy, stout guy. If you ask him to set one gap on the edge, I think he's capable of doing that. Or if you turn him into the old school, if you want to go the Seattle front, right? They play the Sam linebacker on top of the tight end. He can be the guy that sets the edge against the tight end. I think he's capable of doing that. But as an actual pass rusher, I'm a little bit more skeptical maybe than I was when they signed him after watching him, if the production will be there. But if he can be a 2-down player against the run, he can maybe be, Paris Harrelson to Drake Jackson's Aldon Smith in 2011. Not from their similar talents, but from the standpoint that he can take care of the run stuff on 1st and 2nd down, and then they can bring Drake Jackson in to go get the quarterback. And then he can be an effort rusher, on snaps that they rotate a Bosa out, the way a Kerry Hyder has been, the way a Jordan Willis, who I hope they bring back, has been. But he is not an upgrade from either of those 2 players. And I will say I was a little bit disappointed. I didn't expect him to be, he's a top 5 pick, Larry. I thought he was going to be a little bit better player than what I saw.
He knows how to play, but you're right. There's no elite traits. There's no elite speed. There's no elite strength. There's no elite burst. There's no elite, hand technique. I don't see anything
Not
truly elite.
Bend.
The only thing no bend at all. I mean, nothing.
Very stiff athlete.
Very stiff. But he does play the run well. And you know what I think he might be good at? He might be a good replacement for some of those guys like Amenahue or Drake Jackson when they go to their 4D end alignment on obvious passing downs, rushing from the tackle spot a few snaps on obvious passing downs. I could see him having some success there because I think he could stand up against the run better than, Drake, maybe even better than Amenahue did last year. So, I could see that. To me, he's good, solid, NFL caliber, solid NFL player, but not a difference maker at
No,
all. And
no,
I think
not at
they'd
all.
still need somebody more dynamic there. That's why I'm saying I would like to see them go after a Leonard Floyd. You've thrown out Ngakwe before.
Right,
Other people like those guys as well. They just need something a little bit more dynamic. Now, he doesn't cost as much as what Ebukam just got. He doesn't
right.
cost as much as what Amenahue just got, but I don't think he's an upgrade from those guys. I agree. I would say he's a downgrade. T.Y.
I have
McGill.
one question about
Yeah,
what
go
you
ahead.
said though before we get to T.Y. McGill. You
Yeah.
said that you were talking about him being kicked inside, and he did play some three technique for the Raiders, right? I was thinking the same thing when they signed him. In fact, I tweeted it, but the more and more I think about it, Larry, I don't know if they're gonna go to that 4DN lineup as much, and it's because of the signing of Hargrave. I think one of the most underrated things about Hargrave is just his fitness for a 305-pound defensive lineman. The guy really does play every snap. Like,
Yeah.
he's in insane shape. He plays every snap. And so because of that, I mean, I can't imagine Armstead and Bosa on, any important third down being off the field. Similarly with Hargrave. I don't know if Clelin Ferrell would be rushing inside perhaps as much as Omenihu or Arden Key did. And you know what, Larry? I think that's kind of for the best because like you said, there's more talent there for him as just being a stout one gap, do your job run blocker. He's an effort pass rusher. And I'm shocked. Honestly, I wish I was studying that draft that way at the time because obviously I knew the pick was out of pocket, Larry. Only this year, and maybe he's become a worse player. He's lost some confidence, but only like last 2 days when I actually was watching him did I realize like how bad that pick truly was, taking a guy with the physical skill set that he has at fourth overall. That's shocking. That's shocking.
Well, and the reason, first of all, Mayock was the guy who made that pick, and the reason that he loved it so much is he overgraded him out on collegiate production. But he also played, Farrell played on some of the
All 4
deepest
years.
lines in all of college football. He played next to Dexter Lawrence. He played next to, he
Christian
had, I think at
Wilkins.
all times, he had another first round draft choice next to him. But he did have a great first year, which he redshirted the first year. His first year was technically his second year of college. He had a great first playing season, and he really was very, very productive. But he was productive on, as I said, some of the deepest lines in college football, and how much of it was him and how much of it were
Right.
the other guys. I think we found out the answer to that. Um, though he still can find the football against the run, but there's not elite traits. The only thing I'll say that's even borderline elite as a rusher for him is the motor. He's got a good
Right.
motor. The motor's always revving. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Solomon Thomas, who the Niners drafted in the top
Yeah.
5. Who there's a lot of things that I don't like about Solomon Thomas, but I won't deny him his motor. He's got a high revving motor, and I wouldn't be shocked if Solomon Thomas came back. In fact, I did a little
He signed
breakdown. Did he sign?
1 year, 3.9 million, I think, with the Jets.
Oh,
Again, he
okay, okay.
re-signed. Yeah.
The
You finally you mentioned him. I was thinking like before they brought back T.Y. McGill, like, man, hey, Solomon Thomas is still sitting here. Like, wouldn't mind them bringing him back to play inside a little bit.
the guy that I wouldn't mind them bringing back would be Contavious Street. Now I know Street got moved a lot in the run game,
Mhm.
but man, this guy's so explosive at 290 pounds, and he's so explosive that in a pinch you could play him at defensive end if there was an injury. I can't imagine Street is going to get that much money if he was out there, and he is out there. If they were interested in bringing him back, I'd give that a major, major thumbs up.